Hey, everybody, you're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. Folks, it's a whole lot of hairy, heavy homos tonight because we are privileged to be interviewing Chris Lopez and Randy Wyatt. They have collaborated on a piece called Signal and Silence. It's a very interesting type of adaptation. No reason to get into it on our end in relations to a detailed backstory. We have the gentleman here that created it. So first, Randy, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi there. I'm Randy Wyatt. I am a playwright and professor and good buddies with CeeLo. And I'll let him introduce him.
Okay. And now Mr. Chris Lopez, if you would do the same.
Hey, I'm Chris Lopez. I've been doing comics off and on for a couple decades now. It's not my day job, but I do it when I can, and it's a lot of fun. And in my off time, I organize a comics festival here in Chicago called Cake.
Okay. Chris, we seem to get together when we're both out on assignment for work. I hung out with you a lot in Chicago when I had that engagement. And
such is the consultant life.
Yep. Randy, I just realized we go back to the LiveJournal days.
Yeah, we sure do, man. Yep. Before the Ruskies took it over.
Yeah. When everybody
LiveJournal? Is that from the before times? The long time?
Oh, the ancient times. That's right.
Oh, there was nothing like LiveJournal bear drama.
Nope.
There was nothing.
No,
like
my God, it was choice. It was the best.
There were people who weren't satisfied unless the entire world got dragged into it.
No, it was totally true. Nowhere else could cancer be so fake than on
I set it all on fire.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Well, when we have guests onto our show, we're like Loverboy and we start from the start. So I'm going to go over to you, Chris. Chris, how did you first get into comic books?
I guess it must have been maybe like 10 or so. My brother took me to the drugstore that was by the grocery store. They were kind of separate in those days. And they had a comics rack. And it was X-Men number 210, I believe. And I became a lifelong X-Men fan after that. I think before that I had definitely read, like Archie books and stuff like that, but I'd never really found something that had that kind of story. And I fell in love with the characters instantly.
And Randy, how about you?
Well, my road to it is a little weird because I actually wasn't into comics until college. But I was deeply into animation when I was in high school. I watched all kinds of both age-appropriate and non-age-appropriate animation at that point. But I really fell into the underground comics of the 90s of like Milk and Cheese and Too Much Coffee Man and that kind of stuff when I was in college. And then slowly I would start becoming a Marvel guy. And that kind of leads me to today. I'll just find new stuff and go deep with it. Transmetropolitan was a big deal for me. But it wasn't something I grew up with necessarily. It was something that it took till college for me to find.
Okay, and now this is actually the second collaboration that you two guys have done together. Chris, why don't you tell us about the first and how this partnership came about? Sure.
So it was back probably around 2011 or early 2012. I had ran across a couple of, this book that Randy had made, and in it was this monologue called Aquariums, and I just found it to be really charming and importantly short enough for me to be able to tackle as a comics project, because it was only a monologue, and I wound up just adapting the whole thing, so doing all the adaptation, all the art, all the lettering, and when I was done, showed it to Randy and said, "Hey, hope you don't mind, but here's this comic I made from your work."
Yeah, and I did not mind, not at all. It was pretty great.
And so, Randy, why don't you give us some background in regards to the stage play that Signal and Silence is based on?
Sure. So, Signal and Silence was actually came from an online class I had been taking to kind of refresh some skills. And I can't even tell you, it might have been 2013 when I did this, but it was through the Playwrights Center up in Minneapolis, under Jake Jepson, who's a great playwright. And he does this thing, he introduced me to this thing called a bake-off, which has been done, I thought he had invented it, but it turned out no. It has been something that's been bouncing around for a while. And a bake-off is basically a group of playwrights brainstorm a bunch of elements. And so we wind up choosing 7 random elements, and then you get 48 hours of continual writing and have to include all 7 of those elements. And so it's geared to get you to write outside of your usual rhythms or to try to, engage with something new. And so I did 48 straight hours of writing with a little bit of sleep in between, and came up with a draft. And the idea of the whole bake-off was supposed to be revolution. And by the time the dust cleared, I had Signal and Silence there. And it was only meant to be a class project, but then I took it out of the class and decided to keep working on it. And when I was done with it, I honestly was like, okay, I feel like I've created something cool here, but I have no idea who the demographic is. And I'm just going to put this on the shelf for a while I figure out what to do with it next. I really didn't know who would want to see a play about it besides me. And sometimes that's the way I write plays. Like, I want to see this. Let's see if anybody else wants to see it. And so Signal and Silence, I think Chris and I kind of we jive on each other when it comes to some of the background of both Aquariums and Signal and Silence that has to do with our shared background in evangelical craziness, and how people kind of miscategorize a lot of what it's like to grow up in that background and to try to escape it. And that's really what I was trying to write about in Signal and Silence is like, let's capture what it's like right at the time where you realize you've kind of been swindled, and you've kind of been taught that it's almost like half the alphabet is wrong. And how do you start grappling with reality and pushing forward with your own life after life is not the way you thought. It's definitely not the way you've been taught it was. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what that's the heart, I think, of why I decided to write Signal and Silence. And I'll let Chris speak for himself here, but I feel like that was probably something that resonated with him too.
Yeah, definitely. I think from your stories, at least, you had it a little worse than I did, but I did go to Catholic school since first grade. And yeah, there was a definite like crystal shattering moment when it was just like, oh wait, maybe I don't want to be a priest anymore. Maybe this whole thing isn't real. And you just kind of like crawl out from the chrysalis and see the world in a different light after that.
Yeah. And I know I had gone to a pretty conservative Baptist undergrad, and by the time I was done with the undergrad, I wasn't even out yet, but I already knew that I was not going to be part of this subculture anymore. Mm-hmm. I already had a lot of problems with this subculture, and it turns out that you spend your entire collegiate experience with all these other people who are saying the same things and are like the same mind. And when you decide that you are changing your mind, you're pretty lonely, and you have to kind of really navigate that time. And nobody's really feeling particularly sympathetic for you because all the people from the church aren't sympathetic, and people who have never had anything to do with the church are like, why did you believe that in the first place? So that was something I wanted to create some characters and see if I could express some of what that was like and see if there was anybody else out there who might jive on it.
Okay, so we have that backdrop. Why don't you give us the elevator pitch version of the characters and what transpires within the story?
So it's a group of friends who just graduated college, and you've got your main guy is Dorch, short for Dorchester. He's the guy who I always visioned was the the straight bear decoy of the group. Like he looks bearish, but he's straight. And he kind of he and his friends, Nica and but Chris, help me out. My own character just went right out of my head.
Jimmy's the other main character.
Jimmy, thank you. Oh my God. Jimmy and Nica and Dorch are the trio that went to the same Christian school and kind of all graduated and or escaped. And now they're kind of living on their own. Dorch hangs out in a comic shop that he and Jimmy own, and they play Dungeons and Dragons. Or actually, their game it's a D&D hybrid, which they call Revolution, in the basement. Mm-hmm. And the story is really, it flashes backward and forward through time. And you get to know a little bit more about these characters, but right from the beginning, you know that there's something seismic that's going to wreck this friendship. And they've all got some pretty deep secrets that are getting revealed while they figure out whether they can keep this comic shop afloat and whether their relationships can survive the secrets that they're keeping from each other.
Okay, I have to say, as somebody who has had a straight concert husband for the last 27 years, I cannot wait to refer to him as the straight bear decoy now.
Oh my God!
I cannot wait to refer to him. Just as a mechanism so that I don't bogart the interviews, I'm going to throw over the interview baton to Steve. Steve, you take over and throw these gentlemen some questions.
Well, I've just been having fun listening to you guys. So the plot of this, and actually, I guess the storytelling mechanism that you employ here, where there's a lot of jumping around in time, going back over some of the scenes, seeing them again, a little bit of repetition, but maybe seeing them from a different angle, maybe adding, a couple extra frames of dialogue. Now, is that format something that was in the original script for the play? Or Chris, is that something that you and Randy worked on to kind of develop, in this type of comic medium? Because it's a really cool technique that you guys are employing here to tell the story.
Thanks. Yeah, that magic is all Randy. Taking this play as it was, that was one of the biggest decisions I had, kind of as far as how to lay it out and how to tell that story. I kind of came up with a lot of ideas that I couldn't really pull off, kind of like a choose your own adventure, with tabs and stuff to simulate the sort of later chapters. But that was going to get real complicated. I don't think I could have pulled that off, with especially considering how long it took just to adapt the script as it was. And so I just kind of laid it out as Randy did. And then in between chapters, I made sure I had like black pages, to symbolize kind of the lights going off and the actual scene changing, to help with that sort of divide between time periods that would be shifting.
I do have to comment on that because it really, this is the first time I've read a comics adaptation of a stage play. And the way that this was presented and the way this was laid out and, the black pages, it really made it very easy to see this as if it were being staged as a play. And I think, being able to pull that off in a comics medium, in a very different type of medium, where you're not necessarily constrained by, three walls and the audience wall. Like you're there, being able to see this at all angles, but it still felt like, as an audience member that I was watching a staged play, which is really pretty nifty. And I did really appreciate that. I'm trying to think. One of the other things too that I really did enjoy too was the fact that it is relatively open-ended. What happens, obviously, in the future. Some of that is a product of the way the story is told, where it bounces around, and certain things are left unsaid, and very deeply implied. But one of the interesting parts that probably would have been very difficult to pull off in a stage version of this, and I think really comes through in the comics medium, is the sort of dream sequence, where Dorch is imagining sort of the gnome chieftain from the Revolution game, laying out essentially the story of the tribe.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really beautifully done, and also kind of created an air of magic that's something you can really just pull off in comics. So now, going back to the collaboration of this, going from a stage play to comics, was there a lot of back and forth in, maybe cutting some information or adding some other information that wouldn't have been possible? I
was really impressed with how Chris could kind of read my mind a lot. Like I was expecting when he started, getting in on this, I was excited, and then I was like, oh, what's he gonna do, and what are we gonna, and when you are translating from one medium to another, you can't get precious about stuff. It has to read in the medium that it's being created in now. But I was like, okay, but the way I thought through this and the way I'm telling the story, you don't want to screw with too much. And I think Chris was really, so I was ready to pick up the phone and call him and be like, what are you doing? And, and I never did that, because every time he would ink another chapter, I'd be like, wow, he is keeping the theatricality of everything while totally letting the audience go on the ride I was indicating. So yeah, no, keep doing that thing you do. And Chris and I are both very amiable, I guess, and I can't even fathom having some sort of knockdown, drag out fight with Chris Lopez. I think you would have to actually invoke black magic for that to even be possible. Because he's so great, but he's also, he has such a high standard for his own art. And, so I love that he was kind of able to read the pulse of what I was trying to do, and then and flower it even more. I love what you were saying about you could see how it could be staged, because for me, that's the theatricality of it. It really comes through in his use of all the black. The going to black at the end of every chapter is inherently theatrical, and the end it's got the signal of the railroad station going on and off, and I love how he captures that in the ending, because that's really what I wanted in the theater too. So yeah,
I think as written, the ending was a little different, and that was kind of the part where I did expand a little bit, and I kind of broke down the walls, and I said, okay, I can have a bigger ending than what was in the original script.
But it's funny you say that, because I feel like in a way you really just captured the spirit of what the ending would have been anyway. Because I think in the ending of the play, the walls kind of blow out, and he's there on his own, and he's kind of trapped in signal and silence, and you've got that going on spiritually in what you did at the end there. So I didn't really feel like that was much of a change. It was, again, wrapping around your medium. So yeah.
Well, not to bogart the mic that much more, but general questions about the plot, about the the play/book. What was your favorite character? And if you were to change anything about that character and the actions that they took and what, how they were portrayed in the play and in the comic, what would you have done differently? Not giving away too much from the plot, but who was your favorite, and would you have changed anything about what they did.
I mean, I'll go first, Randy.
Yeah.
All the characters are really flawed in some kind of way or other. I had a lot of fun drawing Dorch just because I knew he was the bear decoy, so I thought he would be kind of cute.
Yeah.
But he makes mistakes. He's human, right? Like, so it's kind of hard to really root for someone who's gonna, end up the way he does, and kind of forging his path forward. I mean, there's the kind of innocence in this, which is not Jimmy, but oh my god, I forgot his name. Who is?
We totally made a comic. We did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it took me like 4 years off and on to finish up this comic. There was that one innocent, and he has got a great moment where he kind of stands up for himself before he walks out and is like, "I'm not taking this shit." So that was kind of like
I love that
character.
bit, if I can just interject. I absolutely love that bit.
What about you, Randy?
One of the reasons I went in the direction I did with this is because when I like stories that aren't on the nose, right? Because our lives aren't on the nose. We like to try to make them that way. And yet there's all this stuff that winds up being unsaid. And these are flawed characters because a lot of them are college age. And my God, I know how flawed college age people are. So I think Dorch as a character fascinated me because I think I was him to a certain degree when I was that age. I know a lot of other people who are like that. And so I don't think I would change him at all. I think that Nica is someone who I inadvertently wound up writing. Like, I really like being able to write textured female characters, but I wonder if there's another level of texture that Nica could have gotten. But technically it's not really her story. So maybe that's how I let myself off the hook there. I have found that she at least has the presence of mind to not accept the proposal when she's actually been trained very much in an evangelical background that the minute a man proposes, you better say yes. Because especially in college, like if you get out of college, I know the college I went to, the females were under amazing pressure to get married before they graduated. Because really there was a underlying belief that was sometimes spoken, more often not spoken, that women were going to Christian schools to hook up and find their husband, not really to have a degree or a career. It was their 4 last years to be able to make their high school sweetheart dream come true. And so I love that she doesn't fall for that, but she falls for other stuff that she's programmed to do. And so I guess that would be my answer to my very long answer to your question. That she's someone who I wish would have more strength, and yet I don't know why she would at 19, considering her background.
Yeah, good answers. Good answers there. And Bill, do you have anything else specific to the plot on this one? Because I mean, I don't want to give away too much.
Yeah, not necessarily to the plot, but to some of the elements of the story. Now, I can't appreciate growing up in an evangelical household. I mean, like, growing up, I was the most religious member of my family.
Huh.
But I do know very well what it's like to be a retired Catholic.
Uh-huh.
One thing I have to ask, and I am going to ask this of both you guys, was Dungeons and Dragons, or again, you have an analog in there with Revolutions. Was that part of your gateway out of that world?
Funny you should ask that. Kinda, yeah. But it took a couple. It took a couple tries because I had discovered Dungeons and Dragons in like 86 or 87, not to make me old or nothing, but and then And then my parents found it in my room and had a meltdown. And so I was, but I had been hooked enough to go seek it out later on. Now it's really funny, and I don't know, Chris, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but there's a Christian version of Dungeons and Dragons that came out in the mid 80s called Dragon Raid. And you can totally Google this. It's still up. You can totally find it. You can even buy the original. It's still for sale. And it is a trip, man. Like, you memorize Bible verses, and if you say them all right, then magic spells happen in the game. It's just it's nuts, right? But so that's what was under the Christmas tree that year for me after they had saved me from my inherent Satanism of Dungeons and Dragons.
Take that, Satan.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic.
There's Dragon Raid, man.
Oh gosh, even the styling of the of the box itself, it has a very Dungeons and Dragons type design to it. Oh, that's crazy.
Isn't it crazy? And there's a bunch of dice that they have that are in rainbow colors that I've always wanted to like order them and drill them and make like a necklace, a pride necklace out of them. That only I would understand. No one else would get that. But in my college years, I would get together and play Dungeons and Dragons, and I actually was responsible for the No Dungeons and Dragons rule in the handbook at my college, which I am very proud of. But it wound up being a way out. Okay. Sorry, much longer answer than I meant. Go, Chris, go.
So yeah, I was playing D&D for a long time as well. And so all throughout school and even in high school, like me and my small clique of friends would duck out of lunch and like go to the stairwell and play, anything from D&D to Champions to Star Frontiers or a bunch of other nerdy games like that too. And I don't think there was anything in the games that was necessarily mind-opening. I mean, I do remember my mom not being very happy when she found like the first Dungeons and Dragons book in my room. But it was just like, it's just a game, Mom. And that kind of worked. And I think it really was like, I think my best friend at the time, just like, when you're a kid and you just have these like, 4-hour long telephone conversations with your friends every night. And it's just like, we just got to thinking and just kind of unwrapping these things. And eventually he was like, oh, it just doesn't make sense for me at all. And then that kind of like, that was the first crack in the armor. And then I kind of like dug into it, and it just like it all kind of unraveled after that.
I was mainly asking about that because I've been reading about there's basically been a generation of kids who have used Harry Potter as a stepping stone out of effectively a hyper evangelicalized worldview, and I just figured, well, maybe the antecedent was there in what was covered here. So
I mean, I think that there's certainly along with the Harry Potter thing, just that evangelicals made such a crazy big deal out of nothing, and it becomes really evident. Like, I've talked to kids who've been through that too, but with the Harry Potter thing, and they're like, yeah, it just isn't a big deal. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's not. And that's how I felt about playing D&D, was like, no, demons are not rising out of the table when I'm doing this. Something's wrong.
No, that's for when you're playing with the Ouija board.
Right.
Everybody does after D&D.
Yeah.
Something, this may be more directed towards Randy than Chris, but Chris, certainly if you can chime in on this, I'd appreciate this. Randy, I've also had my attempts at playwriting, and there was one act play that I wrote, Dust to Dust, which had the conceit of two people being in the same place but at different periods of time. And that exercise of choosing which bits of dialogue to weave in and out, I honestly think that made me a better writer.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think I got a lot more of a sense of bettering linear structure through that. And I was just wondering if you could comment on that, because there was, I think, a really good sign of doing that well, where you are not telling a story in chronological order, but bouncing back and forth between points of time. If it still is a cohesive experience as you're experiencing it, that shows you got the goods. So
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could just comment on that, because I was really impressed with that particular element of the story.
Thank you. I mean, I think that I'm always trying to challenge myself as a writer of like, what's the next level that I need to get to so I don't fall into a rut. Like, playwriting to me is needs to be a constant surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that with this particular play, but with other stuff that I've done, I'm like, okay, how do I play with time in a way that actually illuminates what's going on? Like, they're like the classic one I think we talk about when we're talking about movies is Memento, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's all backwards. And Memento was amazing in how it told the story and it kept us in suspense along with the main character. And then there was a million ripoffs of Memento, remember that when people were like, let's do weird things with time, but they didn't have a reason for doing it. It wasn't organic, and it just felt like a gimmick. And so I'm really wary of doing stuff that's simply a gimmick, but I want it to really have a narrative reason for what it's doing. And at least in Signal and Silence, I felt like some of the main stuff that happens in the general storyline needed to be revealed further, later on. And so how do I do that, right? So that was kind of my thinking behind the structuring of that. But I think structure and content really have to, work together.
Chris, you have anything to add to that?
That's way out of my comfort zone. I can write an essay and personal feelings, but I've done a little fiction at the time, but it's always been sort of intentionally simple, and I really haven't stretched those muscles yet.
Okay.
Let's talk about Chris and his unnecessary modesty. Like he inherently has such good instincts in his artwork.
Mm-hmm.
You can just tell, like you can look at a frame when he's got a character just looking, and I'm like, wow, there's an entire moment, there's an entire universe in this moment that he created. So I love when he's all like, oh, I'm not really thinking about that. I'm like, no, you don't have to. It's already in your hands, man. It's already in your heart. You know what you're. So.
Yeah, I'm thankful we're not on video, because then you can see how red my face is right now.
I will talk up Chris Lopez any chance I get, because he's not going to do it for himself.
Yeah, so. Chris, I am going to totally second that motion, because I think in particular with Nica, a lot of her character reveals were in posture, I felt. Yeah. And I think the way that you embodied that character in particular, your artistic choices with her, told me a lot about her before we even really heard her speak. So, done a good job there, son. Really good.
Yeah, it's really interesting how artists get to cast. Like I have to use real people, and the way that Chris cast these characters in his head, I just found fascinating, really cool.
I was gonna just bounce off of the character choice. Yeah, the characters, I wanted to have them all look distinct enough, but in a simple enough style that it wasn't necessarily representational of specific people, and more like abstract concepts a little bit, so that you could just read anybody into it and kind of go from there. So thank you for sort of bringing out the poses and the figures. I've been figure drawing for a long, long time now, so it's nice to hear that. And yeah, just having them, even though they have cartoony faces, I think all their postures and their figures are very naturalistic, and kind of have a weight to them.
Yeah, they do.
And I also have to say, though I've never known people like these two that owned a comic book store, I do have two people that are their brothers, and they've been friends of mine for years, and they had an attempt at a Subway, a sandwich shop, and man, that bit where they were having a meeting like right in the middle of business hours downstairs, man, could I appreciate that, because it was not long lived, and it was nice to see some kind of representation of that. I actually emailed a couple of the panels to Greg, to one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
That's great. Yeah, man. Mixing business and brotherhood, man.
Yeah.
Bad news.
As he puts it, 4 months of a failed business led to a lifetime of great stories. So.
I'm glad it worked out for them. That's great.
Okay, Steve, I got the baton. Giving it back to you. What else do you have?
Speaking of the failed business, and I think with people who are fans of comics, who have been around comics and comic shops for years, I think that this, as one of the plot, one of the threads of the plot, having these two great friends who've known each other for years, who love comics, who love games, and get together and open up a shop, and things don't go according to plan. I think that probably would hit a lot of people pretty close to home if they're familiar with that world, with the world of comics and comic shops. I mean, you know, it doesn't take, especially in the past 20 years since like the 90s boom and bust, to go far and talk to a comic shop owner who isn't like, this is the last year I'm doing this, I'm getting out of this whole game, it's a mess, it's horrible. But have you had any comments or feedback from people who do understand that, who have been in sort of like around the comics retail side, or even had that dream at one point and realized that no, that's not for me? Come up and comment after reading this.
I feel like Chris would be better to answer that because he's around comic folks all the time. So,
so it's actually been in a very limited release so far. It debuted at Cake a couple of months back in June, and I had a small print run thanks to some favors that I pulled for some friends. And so I've only recently put it online with the pay-as-you-want kind of model, so you can just go ahead and download the PDF if you want to read it. And so this week I'm actually really just getting into sort of researching who I should let know that this comic exists, if they want to review it or read it or whatever they want to do with it. So I'm hoping to get more feedback soon.
Well, I can definitely tell you that it did touch me in that way. That part of the story just kind of like, one of those things that when I was young and impressionable and, really loving comics as a younger kid in the very early 90s, that was a dream of mine. But looking back, no. And I'm another 15 years older than than Jimmy and Dorch are, and I know that that's not the age to go into this type of business.
Well, and isn't it funny how like so many of the places that we really love seem like nightmarish business models, right? like comic book shops and used bookstores and cafes, and those are the places I've spent a huge chunk of my life, and then to kind of look back on it and go, wow, actually running one of those places seems like when you're 20 a really good idea, but is actually like fraught. It's fraught with so many financial, you could go south so easily with one of those things.
Yeah.
So not everybody has a Spiro just kind of hanging out with some.
Right. Right. The very convenient plot device there. Yeah.
Chris, you had mentioned Cake a little bit. Why don't you tell us about it, because it has a very good reputation in the indie comics field, but not everybody who listens to this show is tapped into that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Cake and how you became involved with that particular con?
Sure. It's the Chicago Alternative Comics Expo, and it's been running for 8 years, and we're coming up on year 9. And I volunteered for it on the first year, and was just kind of like being a volunteer the day of. And I did that for a couple of years going forward, just because I love the scene. I love just people putting their hearts on the page and just working at it super hard. Everyone out there is really nice. They're like, it's just great to hang out with everybody there. They're happy you're coming by and looking at their art. And so little by little bit, I kind of got more involved into it and became the volunteer coordinator, and now I'm just like one of the core organizers of the show. And We've not secured a date for next year at 2020, but it will be probably mid-June. As we keep it, we try to keep it around the same time every year. So you can go in and you can expect close to 200 exhibitors, about 100, 180, 100, depending on how many special guests and stuff we have. But we've got full days of panels and programming, workshops, and you'll find all kinds of comics. It's a curated show. So we go in and we jury all the applicants out to our fantastic jury of about 200 people here in Chicago. And they all give scores to these jury packs that I send out. I kind of do some mathematical number magic on it and get some averages, and we kind of like curate the show based on those scores.
Okay, cool. I also want to ask you, one of your special thanks in the book went out to Mike Freiheit, and we've spotlighted his work on this show with Monkey Chef and with Adventure. And just wondering what that special thanks was in relation to, because this definitely is kind of in the same wheelhouse, I think, as some of his work.
Yeah, so I work with Mike on Cake, and he actually had all the pages all separated out, and he was like, "Oh, I know a place that I can get some perfect binding," and he took the box and bound all of my initial copies that I gave out at Cake.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Nice to have friends like that.
Yeah, man.
For real.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Randy, why don't you tell us a little bit about some projects that you have coming up?
Sure. So I've been working for the past couple of years on a project that's going to culminate in July called The Water Project, which is about Michigan and water issues. Perhaps you've heard that Michigan has a couple of water issues. And I've been gathering a whole bunch. I've been like Scooby-Dooing around Grand Rapids for a while, and I've been up in Flint, and I've actually been. I guess I can say this here. I've broken into some places and discovered that there have been water bottles. Like we're talking like 10 rooms full of water bottles that got abandoned and never sent to Flint. Or never given to the people in Flint. So I'm creating a piece of theater about water issues, and so that's been taking up my time. This year I moved to upstate New York, and I am the chair of theater and dance at Union College in Schenectady. So I've been besides working on Water Project, I've been kind of just getting used to my new surroundings and taking on everything. So I'm not doing my usual, like, I'm doing 6 projects at once thing that Chris has seen me do many times over the past 15 years or so. But I would love to. I've got a few other pieces. I've got a piece. So I have this thing against Anne of Green Gables. I really hate it.
Okay.
What?
And I do. And I consider it to be homeschool literature, and I think that everybody knows what I mean when I say that. And so I'm writing a piece called Anne of Green Gables Murders Everyone, in which Anne of Green Gables murders everyone. And I've had several. I'm sorry?
She can't do that. I mean, what about?
But she does, because she's insane. Because, the thing is, she could easily have been, like, she gets adopted in a rural city, and she could totally be a psychopath, and everyone would just be like, oh, it's Anne, right, with an E. So, I've already been told by several theater makers, like, the minute you have that done, you need to send it to me. So we'll see.
Yeah. See, I personally, I've always loved Anne of Green Gables.
Have you? Okay.
I was not homeschooled. I will have you know that. But long-time fan of Anne with an E. But one of the things that you mentioned, her being sort of like an unknown, orphan off the, adopted from the city. In the new Canadian series, Anne with an E, Anne of Green Gables, They
Yes.
actually do refer back to like a really horrifically abusive, life in the orphanage with Anne.
Oh.
And they
Oh.
have these flashbacks that are extremely dark where you're just sort of like, God, this girl could probably snap at any time. And then, of course,
Anytime. Totally.
anytime. That really does add an interesting twist to that.
I definitely would play that too. Yeah, man. I
But
can
of
see
course,
that.
Megan Follows was my straight crush when I was like a
Oh,
seven.
really?
So yeah, I mean that'll do it. But yes, I'll be looking forward to Anne with an E murders all of Adam's E.
I mean, what I really want to do is get it so that high schools are doing it everywhere. Like that would be ultimate happiness. But yeah, I mean, no offense to people who love it, but I had been around a lot of homeschooled people and they could not shut the hell up about it. So that's where that comes from. But
Do their liquor cabinets have nothing but cherry cordial in them?
nothing but cherry cordial. That's right. Oh, my God. As if they have. Homeschool people don't have liquor cabinets. They have water sommeliers in the back. So, yeah.
My collection of aged La Croix.
Very aged, indeed.
It just makes it flat water.
So yeah, and I would love to collaborate with Chris again. I have I have talked with him for years now about an idea that I really want to flesh out, and then I'll work on it for a little while, and then I'll suddenly be like, oh, did I say I was going to have that other project done tomorrow? Oh, and then and it never gets worked on. But there's a more traditional, somewhat superhero, like screwed up superhero story I have called Midnight that I'm hoping that someday I will be able to turn to Chris and say, here, go. And then he'll have to like work on it for 10 years because it'll be long. So that's your future, Chris.
I look forward to that day.
So, Chris, why don't you tell us about the contact points on the interwebs where people can find out about this particular project, the Signal and Silence?
Sure. You can find Signal and Silence at my website, osoart, osoart.com. And from there, you can find a link to Signal and Silence. And like I said, you can download it. There's a PayPal link, so you can pay what you want. But the PDF is available for anyone who wants to go ahead and sit with it. Just to set expectations, it's just over 100 pages. So you can definitely download it and read it at your leisure.
Okay.
You can find me Twitter at osoart as well.
Okay, great. And OzoArt will also have some examples of your other work?
Yeah, I've got other shorter comics on OzoArt, so you can read those for free as well.
Guys, it's really been great having you on.
It's been a blast. Thank you very much.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy we got to talk to you guys. And it's like so cool because I've known you guys in other contexts for so long. That when Chris started promoting the print copy in June, I said, oh, God, we got to have these guys on. So
that's pretty cool.
Really
glad
I
appreciate
we had
the
you
opportunity.
guys. Great. We're going to be turning over to another segment of our show. But again, guys, thanks so much. Randy,
No
Chris,
problem.
thank you so much.
All right.
You guys have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're back, and that was a really fun interview, and something we said off mic is we just hope those guys collaborate just for the purpose of having them on this show again.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's so much fun listening to them and getting to chat with them. And of course, now all I can think about is a murderous Anne of Green Gables playing Dragon Raid with her Christian friends. I'm
When Randy mentioned his hatred of Anne of Green Gables, I literally did a spit take. I just was not expecting to hear something like that on a show like this. So
I loved it.
There you go. I absolutely loved it too. So on the Comic Book Bears podcast, if you're a regular listener, you know this. If you're not a regular listener, you know this now. Our final segment is something we call the Woofs of the Week segment, where we spotlight something, be it a comic book or a TV program or a film or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, may be interested in sampling. I'm going to throw this over to you first, Steve. What is your Woof of the Week?
So my Woof of the Week is kind of a half woof at this point. It's woofish. Let's just say it's woofish.
It's
and
woof
it is
adjacent.
Woof adjacent,
Okay.
and or woof with a caveat. So I basically what I'm talking about is the very hotly long anticipated launch of Disney Plus. Disney Plus kind of came up as expected that Disney was going to be releasing their own streaming app with their own original content plus years upon years of Disney films that have been released. Basically what they've said is almost everything that Disney has released will eventually be on this service through, their own studios, through sub-studios and associated things like Touchstone Pictures, etc. And
provided it's a PG-13 and below.
Yeah, basically. I mean, that
caveat,
of course.
Yeah, there is some content that won't make the service because of that.
Yeah, which I think might eventually change, but you never know. I mean,
well, I think that's more an issue with the 20th Century Fox acquisitions than it is with Disney. So, you're not going to be seeing Alien on there.
Well, at least not at this point. And you're also not going to see Pulp Fiction, even though I think that is that Touchstone or Miramax?
And that was Miramax, which was under
Miramax.
But the Miramax rights are a little funky. Because some of the rights have reverted to filmmakers. That one's a little more complicated than the straight out Fox acquisition.
True. But there's so much content. And, if you talk about Fox, even just looking at the PG or classic content, I mean, there's almost 100 years of stuff. So,
there's a 20th century.
It's the entire 20th century. I mean, Karina Longworth will tell you all about it. But
I thought that was going to be your woof of the week.
Maybe next time, because she's still going. And I want to hear the whole thing.
All right, we won't talk about that much.
Okay. So of course the hotly anticipated launch date was the 12th, which was just this past week, and pretty much what seemed to be about 15 million people all attempting to sign on to the service at about the same time. Disney was not prepared for it. So, I mean, with the build-up and the anticipation, the planning and everything on this, I was really surprised that, a lot of people, myself included at times, had difficulty actually logging in to experience all the content. And not to say that it didn't eventually happen, but when you're clicking an app, whether it's on the Xbox or on your phone or on your iPad or whatever, and it keeps telling you that they're having some issues, you should contact customer service. That's not what I want to see on my streaming services. And I get it. It's super popular. Everybody's trying to do the same thing at the same time, but that was kind of disappointing. That being said, oh wow, so much stuff on here that I love. Tons of huge movies that obviously are really big. All the Marvel films, almost all the Marvel films are on here. Obviously Spider-Man is, not surprisingly missing because that is also a Sony property. But there's also some classic Disney Channel movies that I haven't seen or even thought about in 15, 20 years. There's stuff on here that I had forgotten existed, that pops up. So I'm astounded. Now it's not complete. There are some things that are missing, but over time more and more films will be added. What I'm also really happy with are the original programs that I've been watching. Now, more like a Hulu and less like a Netflix, they are releasing episodes weekly as opposed to just all at once. So for their new original series, you're not going to be able to binge The World According to Jeff Goldblum or High School Musical, the musical, the series, or even the new Star Wars Mandalorian series, which, deserves a woof of the week on its own. But it does it does ensure that you are going to be coming back week after week to check out the new content. I've been pleasantly surprised and, very happy with everything that I've watched so far. Even with The Simpsons, being able to see basically every episode of The Simpsons, with a few notable exceptions, has been wonderful. Yes, there's the aspect ratio issues, but they're slowly fixing those.
Why aren't all the Simpsons episodes up? Is it music rights or is it?
There could be content reasons as One of the things that I tried to watch was the first episode of the third season. It is not available. So there are some things that I'm sure have been removed for for rights reasons potentially, but then also for maybe content reasons. I know Disney has been adding warnings to several of its films, including some of the Disney animated features that everybody loves, due to the content.
Basically saying that this is a product of its time.
Yeah,
and there may be some insensitive portrayals within the films, and that's basically most of what I've watched.
Yeah,
I've had a different experience than you. I've run the Disney Plus through the Roku, and I have not had any issues whatsoever.
Good.
With loading. I got up early for no apparent reason on the launch day. It wasn't like even an intention. I just got up early, and Mandalorian was right there. That was my first viewing. I'm certain it was 14 of the 15 million people that watched that was their first viewing. I was never a big Disney kid, and this is providing me an opportunity to watch some of the classic animated films, and particularly the shorts, because I've had no exposure to those. Yeah. Maybe they ran on a Wonderful World of Disney or something in my past, but I'm a Looney Tunes kid, and after seeing almost 2 hours of classic Mickey Mouse and Silly Symphonies, I am still a Looney Tunes kid. There's an edge that just isn't there in the Disney stuff. But I watched Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and I watched Pinocchio. I think Fantasia is up next, so I'm going through the animated films in order.
Oh, nice.
This affords me the ability to do that. There are some omissions, as you mentioned. Spider-Man is an Amazing Friends. There is an episode that was not part of the syndication package that is not on the service, and I believe the reason for that is a depiction of Hitler and Nazis in that particular episode. And in terms of The Mandalorian, we may have a crossover episode with another podcast to talk about The Mandalorian.
Ooh.
So hang on tight for that, folks.
One thing I do have to say that I have been able to discover some things that I didn't know existed. And Marvel animation, especially to me, is something that I don't have a lot of history with.
Yeah.
DC cartoons, I probably watched a lot more of those, especially the classic ones. But I just haven't seen a lot of the classic Marvel ones, and I was shocked, I tell you, to see that there was a Spider-Woman series that came out in the late 70s. It is, it's basically Wonder Woman if she were Spider-Man, with some of the most bizarre plots I think I've ever seen in a cartoon.
You'll get that. I watched the first 2 episodes, and doing
exactly.
the math, that's the first time I've seen them in 40 years.
Yeah, they're kind of surprisingly weird. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say that they're bad at all.
But the animation is surprisingly good.
Yeah, there's some beautiful character. Beautiful
both
character models.
with Spider-Woman, and what I hope eventually hits was the new Fantastic Four with her be the robot. There's some really good animation in those, especially in comparison to the Filmation and the Hanna-Barbera product that was coming out at that time. There's some, but I totally agree with you. The plots are like, whoa.
I mean, I'm gonna make a web square around this pyramid spaceship, and that cancels out the pyramid power, so they fail. It's amazing the feats of logic that these writers, who are probably coked out of their minds, were coming up with. And I thank them for it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to move over to my Wolf of the Week, and I had a lot of choices for Wolf of the Week, but I decided to go with Six Flags Great Adventure and Safari in Jackson, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I am a former season ticket holder. I haven't done it in 2 years. Our friends Greg and Jose invited us for the day, though it's kind of cold now. The main reason that I'm bringing this up as my Wolf of the Week is I was astonished at how much DC content that they have added in those 2 years since I've been there. I went on the Wonder Woman Lasso of Truth, and if you see pictures of it, you'll see that it's it's not a ride for everybody. But I was really glad to do that. The section that had the Batman the Ride and later The Dark Knight, that's expanded. So you go around the whole corner and there's just a lot of DC content. You're basically going on a bridge, Steve, and the bridge links Gotham City to Metropolis.
Ooh,
which
cool.
is pretty cool, And in Metropolis, there are a couple of new rides. One is the Cyborg. They always have these names. The Cyborg Cyber Spin. And my stomach wasn't ready for that. But I did go on the Justice League Battle for Metropolis, which is a 4D interactive thrill and gaming experience, as it says here on the website. And basically the plot line in there is that Joker and Lex Luthor are trying to take over Metropolis, and as if you were in a video game, you have like a bunch of things that you can shoot. I unfortunately shot the Flash in the face instead of one of the Joker gas canisters that was coming. But and you saw the picture, Steve. Like, it really looks like you're in front of the Hall of Justice.
Yeah,
it is. They have a nice souvenir shop, and all through the park, because there are other rides that are not in that section, like the Superman and Green Lantern section, and my favorite coaster in the world, Bizarro, which used to be Medusa, and that was actually the last day that was open for 2019. They closed it.
Oh,
because they closed that whole section of the park off.
Oh, that's weird. Is it because there was water rides? I don't know.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons. They have the amphitheater there. They have the log flume there. And Bizarro's in that corner, so they just close a big section of the park off for holidays in the park. But yeah, these are very long woofs of the week. But
there's so much to say about them.
I have to say that this has made me reconsider getting a season pass for next year. And one of the great things about Six Flags season passes is that you can use them at any Six Flags in the States. So I'd love to go see some of those other ones. So that's my Woof of the Week, primarily because of the added DC Comics content, Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey. Well, we're wrapping this one up. And again, we are the Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. If you want to listen to us, you can download us through iTunes. You can listen to us through Stitcher Radio and some of the other podcatching platforms. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Billy Z.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. Take care, everyone.
Woof!
Stars out on